No fancy stuff, I just want to go over what are the main UX research methods, and at the end, let's cover how to choose the right one, all under 10 minutes. I'm Ash, and I work as a UX researcher. If you're very new to this, or if you work with user researchers but you're not familiar with the space, there's a number of ways to collect data and analyze data. If you check this book over here, Universal Methods of Design, underneath the title, it says 125 ways to research complex problems. Yes, more than 100 ways to research. So if you're starting out as a UX researcher, are you supposed to know all of them? Not really. Think of the standard methods most companies are familiar with: in-depth interviews, surveys, and usability testing. So when you're faced with a topic to do some research, instead of having to consider any of the methods available on this book, you're actually thinking, would any of the 3 methods allow us to collect the info that we need? And it doesn't have to be one method over the other. You can still decide to go with more than one in a single project. Let's look at these 3 different methods. In-depth interviews are a great way to capture qualitative insights from your target audience, customers, or future customers. You're trying to understand the why. Very useful early in the design process where there's a lot of unknowns. If you speak to people and explore their perspective, you'll also have this info you can analyze and distill and share with your team members. You're producing generative research. With interviews, you're observing verbal as well as non-verbal cues, and you're asking follow-up questions to tease out information that may be difficult to articulate. Usually you have a script with questions, but of course you have some leeway to improvise and adjust some of the questions according to what the interviewee is saying. Let's move on to the second method. With surveys, this is where you'll hear people refer to the quantitative research or quant research. They have this list of questions sent out to a targeted group of users. We're not talking about a small sample. It's usually more than 100 respondents, and you're collecting data around their attitudes and preferences. You can try to collect data around how people behave, but be aware you're relying on what people self-report. Think of this question: how many times did you check your phone today? Do you trust people would be able to give an accurate answer to the question? So surveys can be quick and inexpensive, but if it's not well designed, the results won't lead to valuable insights. As for when to use surveys, I've seen surveys being used in different stages of a product being built, sometimes even before it's been launched. But remember, the surveys are at their best when you already know certain things and you want to have numbers to quantify those things. As an example, if you're trying to determine the scale of a problem or estimate impact, or if you would like to compare and benchmark the experience of the product with the past version or a competitor. And then finally, we have usability testing, also known as user testing, which feels, we're not testing the user, we're testing the product. But usability testing involves asking potential or current users of the product to complete a set of tasks while we observe their behavior and see if there's any struggles or pain points. This can be done using a live version of a website or an app, a prototype, which is a simulation or a sample version of the final product. Or you can even use pen and paper. Participants are often asked to think out loud during usability testing. You usually don't need a high number of participants. You could try 5 or 10, depending on the circumstances, unless you're running a benchmarking usability test, which would involve at least 40 participants. With the usability test, you hear people say unmoderated or moderated. It's an important distinction. Unmoderated means you don't need a person facilitating the session. It's just a participant by himself or herself. Nowadays, there's research platforms that can take care of that for you. The testing tool delivers the task instructions and any follow-up questions. After the participant completes the task, you receive a recording of the session or the answers the person gave, while the moderated sessions means you'll be there to interact with the participant. Before the pandemic, people would be invited to join the office, but nowadays it's still mostly done remote via Zoom or any other screen sharing platform. It's very common in our practice to have different names to things that are basically the same. One example is guerrilla testing, which is just another name for usability testing, but guerrilla testing makes this assumption that it's something done in a scrappy way. If your potential customer is anyone on the street, you can just approach random people and ask them to try your product in exchange for a coffee voucher. Regardless of being moderated or unmoderated, usability testing is usually an eye-opener. I plan on making another video on this topic in more detail. The thing is, you're not only hearing what people have to say, but you actually see how they behave and interact with the product in front of them. When done in the later stages of design, or even when the product has been released, it reveals what are the things that could be improved with direct user feedback. Would these three methods take care of all the findings we'd like to uncover? Maybe not. Just worth keeping in mind, those are the ones most companies and teams are familiar with. Are there any other research methods worth considering? I'll speak to the ones I've used in the past. There's field studies. Again, you'll hear some people talk of ethnographic studies or contextual inquiry or observational research. All of these are field studies, meaning you get to visit and follow participants in their natural habitat as opposed to inside your office. If you're there observing, you're also writing down or taking pictures, recording the participants' actions. It takes a little bit of time for participants to ignore the fly on the wall. Another method is the diary study, where participants document and share their impressions over a set period of time. I worked with a team looking at TV habits and how people interacted with their TV setups over 4 months. It's over a long period of time. There are some really nice research platforms that help with that. You can try the cheapo route, but be prepared for the extra time and effort in preparing and keeping participants engaged, having them share pictures or text or audio. You're looking for anything that reveals their experience over the time agreed. This is the best method to get contextual understanding of users' behavior over time. Bonus, you get to see how people use one product alongside other products in their day-to-day. What about A/B testing or focus groups or card sorting? Obviously, the list of research methods is long. There's no way to cover all of them in a short video, but at this point, it's worth talking about how you get to choose one method. Speaking for myself, when I'm considering which methods to choose, I'm thinking of two things: objectives and constraints. Objectives is what my team wants from this research, and constraints, what are the limitations that I face with this project. Let's go with an example. Imagine you're working on a product that hasn't been released yet. You're working for a startup and they don't even know if they actually have market fit. There's a lot of pressure to learn as much as possible from the target customer base. Anything the team might be overlooking could be key. Would any of these three methods that I spoke earlier work here? So we have usability testing. Doesn't make that much sense since you don't have a product yet. Maybe you could consider a survey, but then the surveys are good when you know some facts already. It makes sense to go for it if you have some hypothesis to test and not try to uncover unknowns with a survey. If you want to drill down into many questions, might as well start with a small sample of people. And once you define some hypothesis with this small sample, you can then try a larger group of people with a survey. So in this case, we're talking interviews and then surveys after. All of this is about trade-offs, right? It's very common for teams to have a natural bias towards one method. It's probably the one they're most familiar with, which means I have to make a strong case if I like to try something different. Again, remember, you don't have to go with a single method for a research project. In fact, it's usually recommended you try triangulating data points. Triangulation means you're looking at something from more than one angle. You again triangulate by looking at different sources of information, such as surveys and interviews, or you can look at different types of information, like comparing results from usability testing with analytics data. But there's one other thing worth mentioning. I left the most important for last. Ready? A UX researcher that has more experience will not jump straight into dictating what is the best method before spending some time to understand what the team needs. I've seen in job interviews the hiring manager may describe a scenario and ask the candidate about methods, and the candidate starts listing all the methods they are aware of. This is an opportunity to ask questions first. Does the team have clarity on their objectives? What is the stage of the product? Do they need numbers to show the scale of the problem, or is it best to have videos to share of people explaining their struggles? And if this video helped, I can't wait to share the next one. It's all about surveys. Make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you around.